Good evening and welcome, one and all, to Pacific 4 episode review. I am your host, Mike. Tonight, we are going to be reviewing season 2, episode 7 of Chucky, called Going to the Chapel. Except in this one, no one's getting married, although there is going to be an exorcism, and yes, somebody or some buddies do die in this episode. So let's go ahead and get underway with this spoiler filled review. And it starts off by having Jake in confessional with Father Bryce, and he is confessing all his sins before this exorcism takes place. He is telling Father Bryce about the murders of his father, Devin's brother, his adopted brother, Gary, and a few others. And Father Bryce says, well, son, murder is a pretty serious sin. So there's that confessional. And there's several confessionals in this episode. I'm going to go ahead and get those out of the way for this review. You have, of course, Jake here giving his confessional. You have Father Bryce even giving his own confessional. You have confession by Dr. Mixter. You also have a confession by Glenda. You also have a confession by Andy Barkley. But as far as Jake is concerned, he starts talking about how different people have been murdered, and he feels that he's responsible because he brought Chucky home from that garage sale. So we have that. And then we flash to another scene. Let me mute this before I get any kind of claim. But we mute to another scene after the kids have come down from the tower after Nadine's unfortunate demise in the last episode. And Dr. Mixer is pointing the gun at the three kids, and she's demanding Chucky be handed over to her. And she puts in a line that good guy dolls are very rare and she needs Chucky. And the reason why she needs Chucky is because he is the last of his kind and he needs to switch bodies, come together with Chucky Prime. Of course, we all know Chucky Prime is within the confines of Nika's body. And at one point, Jake actually takes the former good Chuck and slams him against the wall, says a few things to him about why'd you do it. And of course, good Chuck is trying to act like he's still good Chuck. But it's all for naught because they do hand Chucky over to the Dr. Mixer until Kyle shows up. She has arrived at Incarnate Lore and she is pointing her gun at Dr. Mixer, telling her to drop Chucky. And of course, we do get a reunion between Andy and Kyle. They both thought the other was dead. Let me get to that scene. I'll try to move it back here just a little bit. There we go. But there's a nice little reunion between Andy and Kyle. Both thought the other was dead, but as you know, they're not. And of course, you have Sister Christine, and you also have Father Bryce, and they have to come up with a plan of getting rid of good Chucky. So their plan is to actually perform an exorcism. While that's going on, you have Jennifer Tilly, aka Tiffany, at this diner. There's a TV on, and it's giving the news report. And on the news report, it's talking about Jennifer Tilly's house being burned and Jennifer Tilly being on the run. Now, I'm not talking about the real Jennifer Tilly. I'm talking about the Jennifer Tilly of Chucky. So you had that report going on. Of course, this lady right here recognizes her, and this guy right here recognizes her. He wants to get a picture of her, and she leaves in a hurry. And when she gets out of the diner, she gets back into the car where she starts telling Glenn that she needs to transfer her body back to the doll. In other words, to Jennifer, where Jennifer Tilly is currently being held. She needs a new vessel, and that's the only available vessel. Of course, she also goes on later on in the episode about how great it is being a doll and how you can always pick out your cute outfits, cute shoes, and surprise your unsuspecting victims by posing in one pose, and nobody would ever suspect. Meanwhile, back at Incarnate Lore, you have Devin and Jake, and they are talking to Lexi, and Lexi is saying, other than trying to get rid of Chucky and failing at getting rid of Chucky, what else do we really have in common? We don't have anything else in common when it comes to our likes and our dislikes. As a matter of fact, the two of you don't seem to be getting along too well either. So we have that exchange, and it's a pretty interesting exchange where a few, low blows are basically said as far as dialogue is concerned when it comes to Jake and Devin's relationship. And then you see Lexi sitting on the bed. Of course, there's somber music playing. And at one point, Lexi actually takes out the bottle of prescription medicine, the pills that Good Chucky gave her in the last episode, and she puts some on top of the dresser. She starts eating some, and let's just say she's feeling real good after does that. So then we have a scene inside the study between Father Bryce and Sister Christine. They're talking about what they need to do and how they need to go about doing it. And what they're trying to do is perform an exorcism. Of course, they can't perform an exorcism without getting in touch with the Vatican, which Father Bryce does end up doing. Unfortunately, he's excommunicated from practice. He's excommunicated from the church. And at one point, he even says, well, if I'm no longer going to be in church, then I'm going to go rogue and do it myself. Also, what you have is you have a conversation between Nika, Kyle, and Andy, and they're all trading their own war stories, you want to put it that way, about their own experiences with Chucky. Of course, Andy makes the reference to his babysitter getting killed in the first Child's Play movie. And there's even at the end of this episode a clip from Child's Play 2. I will show you that a little later. Nika talks about her experience with Chucky. And then we also have a scene between Jake and the former Good Chuck. And Good Chuck is still trying to pass himself off as this good, wholesome, good guy doll who has exorcised his demons. He is now baptized. He is still an angel, but come on, it's Chucky. And a way we find out that it's Chucky is Good Chucky ends up headbutting Jake at one point, which Andy then says, you know what? Maybe it's best if I take Chucky out of here and put him someplace where he won't bother anybody. So We then go to a scene where Lexi, yeah, she's feeling real good. Yeah, overdosing on some of the drugs. She's not feeling any pain whatsoever. And while she's not feeling any pain whatsoever, guess who comes back in her hallucination? Or you could say she's coming back from the heavens. That's right. Nadine returns in angel form. And she essentially tells Alexa that, don't worry, you're a good person. You're going to beat this. You're great. You're the best. So they have their little heart to heart. Lexi to her now guardian angel. That's how I interpreted it. That Nadine is now her guardian angel, giving her advice. Of course, yeah, like I said, it's the prescription drug. So Lexi's not feeling bad at all. And I do want to say hello to Leia Rose in the chat. Welcome, Leia Rose. So after they have their little heart to heart where Lexi is given a confidence booster and told that you're doing what my mother couldn't do, and that's break your habit, we see where Andy decides to put the former good Chuck. And while that's going on, we also get scenes cut in between of everybody's different confession and any and all sins that they've committed. Of course, we also have a scene in Father Bryce's office. This is where he's excommunicated from the church. And we also see a book that he has, and it's Exorcism for Dummies. So we have that. And of course, Sister Christine is someone that Father Bryce trusts. And then it brings us to a scene with Glenn and Chucky. They start talking back and forth. They do mention Glenn and Glenda and why haven't you and mom told us some of these things that we're just finding out now? Why are you holding back? And Chucky makes another lie saying, oh, we were going to tell you, but it wasn't the right time. Sweetheart, you got to understand. So he's lying to Glenn. And of course, this is her confessional scene to Father Bryce. And then we have a scene inside the chapel after Jake has lit all the candles. They begin the exorcism. Father Bryce starts saying, the power of Christ compels you. He has some holy water, which he sprinkles onto Chucky. You see smoke coming up because it's burning. Meanwhile, as that's going on, we have a scene with Tiffany and Glenn and Jennifer Tilly in doll form. Not talking about the real Jennifer Tilly, the Jennifer Tilly of the show. And as these two are having a heart to heart, and this is where Tiffany is saying how great it is to be inside the body of a Belle doll because you get all these cute clothes, all these cute shoes. What they don't see as the conversation's going on, at least what Tiffany doesn't see, is that Jennifer Tilly in doll form is loosening her restraints, and she ends up getting out of her restraints, leaving the vehicle, unfortunately, to get run over by a semi truck, and she splatters all over the road. So, goodbye to the Chucky version of Jennifer Tilly, but we still have Tiffany. Meanwhile, back at Incarnate Lore, the exorcism is being conducted. There you see everybody's trying to hold Chucky down as Father Bryce is reading various verses from the Bible to get this exorcism done and over with. And we have a scene pretty much taken out of The Exorcist, where Chucky, I'm trying to get to it here, but Chucky actually spews all over Father Bryce. Although, if you ask me, it was just pea soup. So the exorcism continues. Chucky's like, what kind of feeling is this? What the hell is going on here? He starts, you know, moving all about, shaking all about, doing the hokey pokey, turning himself all around. And at one point, Father Bryce leans a little too close to Chucky. Chucky manages to bite his lower lip, and Father Bryce begins bleeding, which brings out Chucky Prime. Prime says, I can't believe you guys are performing an exorcism without me. And it's short lived as far as Chucky Prime being awakened inside Nika, and Kyle goes over and punches Nika, knocking her out. So the exorcism continues, and Chucky starts floating up from the table. They're saying, the power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you. You will leave this body, you heathen. They keep saying those two lines over and over again. Finally, it's over, or is it? As the doll's body lands on the ground, Father Bryce looks up, and Father Bryce has now been possessed by Chucky. And Chucky here says, I can't believe it. I'm 6 feet tall. And unfortunately for Dylan Sawa, sorry, the actor who has played both Jake's dad and uncle and now Father Bryce, well, he doesn't make it to the last episode. Nope. He explodes. I mean, he explodes. I'm not going to show it here, but he explodes. And the only thing remaining is his head. So that ends up happening. And then we have Father Bryce's confession that happened prior to the exorcism occurring. And he's confessing to Sister Catherine and talking about how he always doubted himself. Then we have a scene back inside the chapel where Nika is performing the ceremony, the ritual to transfer Charles Lee Ray's spirit from her back into the good guy doll. So the transfer is a success. And she starts saying the chant. She starts shaking. She starts convulsing. And then after that happens, Jake ends up grabbing Chucky again. And he dunks him into the holy water. And unfortunately, something does happen where Jake has to stop. And that something is the appearance of Sister Ruth. Sister Ruth shows up. She has a gun. And as you can see, she has it pointed at the back of Lexi's head. And she is doing this in the work of the Lord. So she thinks. Because if you've been following this episode, I know some of you have, some of you haven't. But in this season, she believes that Chucky is the Lord and Savior. So she ends up pointing the gun in the back of Lexi's head. Now, when Glenda was talking to Chucky earlier, and Chucky was saying, you weren't ready for this information, and he's also telling Glenda that she's a killer, he also told Glenda that he has a bayonet hidden behind an organ underneath of loose stone. Well, that pays off because it's Glenda, who actually uses that bayonet, she ends up killing Sister Ruth. And you see a scene later on in this episode where Glenda's holding the bayonet, and on the bayonet, you see the initials of Charles Lee Ray, CLR. And on this pew, in front of the one that Glenda's sitting at, you see Charles Lee Ray's initials on it as well. So after Sister Ruth is killed, Dr. Mixer tries to make a run for it. Andy ends up following. He grabs the gun that Sister Ruth had, and he follows. He, as you can see, he shoots Chucky, knocks him out of her arm, out of Dr. Mixer's arm, that is, and fires several more shots, and Chucky is dead. There, you see it right here, where everybody's looking at the fallen Chucky, and this is the scene where, let me try to pause it real quick before I get anything, but I'm going to show you this right here. As far as that bayonet is concerned, if you look real closely here, of course, it gives you a shot, trying to get it to come in. As you see it coming into focus, you see Charles Lee Ray's initials here and on the handle of the bayonet. So that ends up happening. And then we have what you think is an end scene. And it's a conversation between Glenda and Nika, and Kyle and Andy even have their own scene where they're talking about their future. And Andy says, I haven't thought about my future since the first grade. And Nika and Glenda are talking about what they might end up doing. And, as far as Jake, Lexi, and Devin are concerned, well, their future is wide open because they believe that Chucky is dead, but it's not all over just yet because Tiffany ends up showing up. And as soon as Tiffany shows up, of course, Glenn's there too. You see here, Nika pulls out the gun, and that's also when Glenda says, Dad's dead. Nika says, and Mom is too. Nika goes to shoot Tiffany to unfortunately have Glenn leap in front of her, pull her down, and take the bullet for her. So you have Glenda freaking out. You have Tiffany freaking out. Glenda says, get them into the car. And then they end up driving away. And we got a sneak preview for next week's season 2 finale. Now, at this point, I will go ahead and read some of the comments because I see some of your comments. So give me a second. And I will pull up the comments. I don't want anybody to think that I've been ignoring the comments this whole time. I have not. I want to say hello to Brandon Looney Tunes Fan 2000. Good evening. And of course, we have Phil McCracken, Dean Dons, Yo, Dean Dons, and Crick Gets No Snowballs. And we also have Kathy Skywalker. Hello, Kathy. Then we also have Phil McCracken says, that's an awful small bayonet. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Very small. So overall, this episode is what it is. It's not terrible by any means, but it's not great by any means. It has its issues, like most of the episodes of this season have issues. I thought, as far as the exorcism was concerned, I felt it might have dragged on just a little too long. And there was another thing that I just thought, was shown a little too much. And that scene was when Father Bryce, who was possessed by Chucky at the time, ends up exploding, and they show it from multiple angles, and I thought that was overkill. I'm thinking, okay, 2 or 3 different angles, fine, but really? Multiple angles? No. And then I just thought it was silly when you had the scene with Nadine coming back as an angel, and, she's trying to pump up Lexi and telling her she's the best. I'll tell you what makes it silly for me is the fact that they're trying to make her wings glow, and you can tell that they just use LED lights. So, just some small issues. Of course, there's also a part where Chucky tells Devin what his mom's doing in hell, and Devin says she's not in hell, and Chucky says, "Huh, you sure about that, kid?" So yeah, you know, it is what it is. Unlike last season where I felt that the show was getting better as the episodes went on, granted, just like this season, it was only 8 episodes. I feel like that we've only had a few episodes that actually start to move along the story, and then we've had some episodes where it just goes at a standstill. It goes nowhere. And then some points in some episodes like this one where they focus on certain scenes longer than they need to. So, is this episode rewatchable? Well, I've watched it twice already. Will I watch it a third time? Probably not. But if I were to, say go watch it, yeah, go watch it once. Make your own opinion. Don't go by my opinion. Don't ever go by anyone's opinion. Make up your own mind. You might watch this episode. Heck, you might watch these first 7 episodes of season 2 and go, I don't know what your problem is, Mike, but I'm liking this. And that's fine. But as far as I'm concerned, this second season isn't as good as the first. Now, if I were to give this a rating out of 5, I would give it a 3, maybe a high 2.9 or a 3. It's one of those episodes where it can go either way. But if you want me to give an actual solid rating, I'm going to say a 3 out of 5. It's not, you know, terrible when you compare it to some other things or even a couple of episodes that we've already gotten this season, but it's not great either. It's not an episode that I think is worth a 4-star rating or even a 5-star rating because it's not perfect. It's not perfect at all. It's got its flaws. It's got its flaws on focusing on certain things a little too long when you could move the story along, maybe find out a little bit of information like we found out at the very end of the episode that perhaps it's Dr. Mixer who is possessed by Chucky after all. She does drop a few hints in this episode as far as who gave Chucky the idea and to worship the demon god that allows Charles Lee Ray to transfer his soul into the good guy doll in the first place in the original Child's Play. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next week. And speaking of next week, I will actually be giving my live reaction and review to the season finale next week at 8 p.m. Eastern. That will be on Wednesday in place of Pacific Forum for Pop Talk. I figured, everybody's going to be spending time with their family on Thanksgiving the next day, and I can go ahead and give my thoughts on the season finale of Chucky. But I do appreciate everybody for being here, lurking for a little while, stopping by and commenting in the chat. I do appreciate it. Leaving a like. And I also want to say I have noticed that YouTube is purging subscriptions again. So please be sure to make that you are still subscribed to the channel. If you could, make sure that notifications are set to all. This way, you know when I upload a video or I go live. And I'm not saying you have to stick around and watch a video. I'm not saying that, but just make sure to leave a like, say hello, and if you have to move on, move on. But please make sure that you're still subscribed. If you like this review, leave a comment, leave a thumbs up. If you didn't like this review, thumbs down. You might look at this episode and say, I liked it. That's fine. And Kathy says, don't know much how longer I'll be awake. Had 2 melatonin gummies and they work pretty good. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. Well, I appreciate you being here, even if it's for a short time, Kathy. I appreciate Phil being here for a short time as well. Of course, we had Brandon Looney Tunes Fan 2000, Leia Rose, and the first commenter was Jose Eduardo. Thank you, Jose. Really appreciate it. And I appreciate each and every one of you. So that's my review of this episode. It's okay. It's not great. It's just okay. So, with that being said, remember, I'm not just a baseball guy. I'm an all around guy who does episode reviews, movie reviews, live streams with video gameplay, and also Pacific Forum 4 Pop Talk. The next live stream on this channel will be at 8 p.m. Eastern this Saturday as I celebrate 3 years of being a YouTube content creator. So if you are free and available, come on by, chat in the chat, or come on the panel. It will be open panel for anybody who wishes to come on. And let's have some fun. Let's have some fun talking about movies, TV shows, games, comics, favorite hobbies. Let's focus on the good stuff because there is something I am going to talk about Saturday, and it's actually pretty good. It's actually worth watching, but you'll have to wait till Saturday to hear what I'm talking about. So, thank you, everybody. Have yourselves a good night, and I will see you all later.